Hi, everybody. This is video 3.7 part 2. You might recall we did part 1, and then we did 3.6 where we did the shutdown rule, and now we're back at 3.7 part 2, and we're going to take this all the way through to the finish line. We're taking you from short run to long run for the perfectly competitive market. Ugh, mouthful. Here we go. What is the long run, and what does our perfectly competitive market look like in the long run? Well, we know in the short run, firms are attracted to profits. In a perfectly competitive market, if, when we use our farmer's market scenario, if I'm a potato farmer and me and all the other potato farmers are making money hand over fist, other firms are going to see that. They're going to switch their production over and they're going to make potatoes and they're going to get their share of the profit. They can do this in a perfectly competitive market because one of the key characteristics of this type of competition is that there are no or very few barriers to entry. Meaning it's not very costly to start making potatoes. It's not labor intensive. It's not capital intensive. There's no government regulation. No one's going to sue you. There's not a big, powerful potato lobby that keeps you from competing, right? They're not keeping prices artificially high. None of those barriers to entry are there. So firms can enter and firms can leave at leisure without many issues at all. So when there are profits and they get an equal share of that, because the products are identical, all they have to do is grow a potato and they get an equal share of that, then firms are going to enter the market. And when there are losses, the opposite will happen, right? If nobody comes in and buys potatoes for a while, then we all lose money, all of us potato farmers. And some are going to say, you know what, it's not worth my while. And they're going to shut it down when the price falls below the AVC. Like, you know what, it's better to pay my fixed costs and produce zero than to pay these losses, right? So they shut down and they leave the market, which raises the profitability of all the remaining firms. We talked about that on the last concept. So where does that leave us in the long run? Firms can enter for profits in the short run and leave for losses in the short run. Where are we going to be at in the long run? And the answer is, in the long run, in a perfectly competitive market, there's going to be zero economic profit because there'll be no incentives for firms to enter and no incentives for firms to leave. Profits will attract more, pushing profits down. Losses will shift firms out, pushing profits up until we land at the perfect equilibrium where there's zero economic profit. Now, remember, just because there's zero economic profit doesn't mean that firms are losing money or making $0. There's still a positive accounting profit. Remember, economic profit is total revenue minus explicit minus implicit costs. Accounting profit is just total revenue minus explicit costs. It doesn't take into account opportunity costs. So when economic profit is zero, that means my accounting profit is positive. That's why we call it a normal profit. So in the long run, we'll be at a normal profit. This is super efficient. If we're overproducing something, firms will get losses, they'll leave the market, and we'll correct. If we're underproducing something, profits will be there. It'll attract more firms. It'll push the profits down, and firms will, redistribute the profits, and we'll have enough product for everybody, right? Super efficient, changing based on what the industry or what the market wants. Let's take a look at this in graph form. In the long run, it looks like this. We have our industry on one side, and we see that the price is made in the industry. We know a perfectly competitive firm is a price taker. They take that price. They have no control over price. Why? Because their product is 100% identical to every other product. So we dash that over, and that gives us our Mr. DARP. I call it Mr. D because that's too many letters. Mr. DARP is perfectly horizontal. We talked about that. They're a price taker. That's why that's the case. Then we have our marginal cost, and we have our average total cost. Question, is this firm making a profit or a loss? All right, let's take our little handy-dandy pen here, and let's find it. We know we're going to produce where MR equals MC. That's right here. That's going to give me a quantity of 8. My marginal revenue is 15, so my total revenue is going to be 15 times 8, or 90? 90. I might have done that wrong. 15, 30, 45, 60, 120. That's 120, right? Math, whatever. You can't check it. It's a video. What are you going to do? You're going to write in a comment, send me an email? You got nothing. All right. Now I have to, so that's my total revenue. How do I find my total cost? I dash up from 8. Let me change the color here so you can see. I dash up from 8 until I hit my average total cost curve. Oh, look, it's in the exact same spot. I dash over. My average total cost is also 15. So it's going to be 15 times 8, or 120. If my total revenue is 120 and my total cost is 120, then my profit is going to be 0. Remember, we said whenever we look at a graph, we're talking economic profit. We have an economic profit of 0. We call this a normal profit. So friends, this is how you know. I'll just put norm up there. This is how you know if a firm is in long run equilibrium. If it is at this point, there is no incentive for firms to enter because there are no profits. There's no incentive for firms to leave because there are no losses. As a result, we're going to stay right here where we belong. There's going to be no change in the quantity produced, the amount of firms, or the price, as long as there's no change in the marketplace. This is long run equilibrium. It is another triple intersection at the intersection of Mr. Darp, average total cost, and marginal cost, where total revenue equals total cost. Let's keep going. So let's take a look at this. Is this firm in the short run or the long run? What do you think? Well, it's got to be in the short run. Why? Because it's not at a triple intersection. Remember, only way we can identify long run equilibrium is when average total cost, marginal cost, and Mr. Darp are all intersecting at the same point, because that means total revenue equals total cost, and it means we have a normal profit or an economic profit of 0. So it's got to be in the short run. Why? Because we currently have a profit. How do I know we have a profit? Well, I know that profit is the difference between Mr. Darp and average total cost. I find where my equilibrium is, MR equals MC. I dash down, that gives me my quantity of 8. My price is going to be 15, so 15 times 8 is 120, right? But my cost, I dash up until I hit average total cost. And so my average total cost is going to be something less, like, I don't know, $10. So 10 times 8 is 80, and so I have a profit of $40. That means I have an economic profit. You can identify this easily. As long as Mr. Darp is above average total cost at the intersection between MR and MC, you're going to have a profit. When Mr. Darp is below or submerged below average total cost, you're going to have a loss. Okay? All right. So what will firms do in the long run if this is true? Get rid of that. If we know that we have a profitability here, what's going to happen in the long run? In the long run, firms are going to enter that market, right? They're going to say, you know what? We want a share of those profits. How are they going to get a share of those profits? They're going to enter the market. How do we demonstrate a firm entering the market? Well, we jump back over here to the industry. Remember, we have a determinant of supply, which is when there's an increase or decrease in the amount of firms in the market. So when firms enter the market chasing their share of that green box, it's going to shift that supply curve to the right, like so. When that supply curve shifts to the right, we have a new price, right? Because supply shifts to right. When supply shifts right, price falls. You know this. You know this really well. Now, here's the deal. When the price falls, does the firm have to change their price? Yeah, they do. They are a price taker. Whatever happens over here in the industry impacts their price over here. So what's going to happen is we're just going to dash this new price over, and that's going to give us a brand new Mr. Darp. It shifts our marginal revenue, demand, average revenue, price curve. Okay? So, let me get this out of the way. It looks like this. Now that we have a new Mr. Darp, what's true? Our profits went from this green box here to actually 0. We are back at 0 economic profit, long run equilibrium. Did you catch that? In the short run, there are profits. Because of profits, firms enter the market. When firms enter the market, supply shifts right. When supply shifts right, it pushes the price down in the industry. Because firms are price takers, they have to lower their price along with all of Mr. Darp. When they lower their price, they squash out those profits. They're redistributed to the new firms that have entered the market. You know that logic. When that happens, we land at 0 economic profit. They'll continue to enter the market until there is no more incentive to do so, or until we have 0 economic profit at that new equilibrium. Okay, not so bad, right? There's a logic to it. So this is a firm in long run equilibrium. Price equals marginal cost equals minimum average total cost. It's going to be intersecting at the minimum point. That becomes important a little bit later. Notice the firm is making no economic profit. That's just a reiteration of all the things we just said, but they are making a positive accounting profit. If you didn't write that down all the times I said it, you should pause the video and write it down now. And there's no incentive to enter or leave the market, so we will stay here in this equilibrium forevermore until acted upon by an outside force, per Sir Isaac Newton, if he studied economics. So that right there is your total revenue. That is also your total cost. They're equal. Okay, let's try this one. Is this firm in the short run or the long run? Well, obviously it's got to be short run. Why? Because in the long run, we'd have triple intersection. We do not have that here. At that quantity, we do not have it. In fact, our average total cost is above Mr. Dart. What's that mean? Costs are greater than revenues? That means we have a loss on our hands. It looks like this. MR equals MC is going to be my quantity. 15 times A is going to be my total revenue. I dash all the way up to average total cost. That gives me my average total cost, which is going to be larger than that, and the difference is my loss. So if there are losses in the short run, what are firms going to do in the long run? In the long run, firms going to leave. Those losses chase firms out. They have better opportunities somewhere else, so they're going to leave that market. When they leave that market, what happens? Well, we know when firms leave, do we have more supply or less supply in that industry? Well, we're going to have less. When supply shifts left, what happens to price? Price is going to rise. When price rises, it's going to squeeze out those losses. Profits are going to rise for all the firms until we get to zero economic profit. It looks like this. Firms leave to avoid losses. Supply decreases. When that happens, the price goes up. When price rises, we know this firm has to take that price. Why? Because they're a price taker. They're a perfectly competitive market. So we're just going to dash that 20 over, and that's going to give us our new Mr. Dart curve. There you go. When we get that new Mr. Dart curve, it is going to keep going up until it hits the triple intersection. At that point, quantity goes up in the marketplace, price goes up in the marketplace, and as a result, we have zero economic profit, and we're back in long-run equilibrium at a different price and a different quantity. Again, zero economic profit at this point. So in the long run, supply is going to take it home. That's right. Leave it alone. Supply takes you home. It's going to be supply shifting left or right. It's going to change the price, which then in turn changes Mr. Dart, which then changes us from having a positive economic profit or negative economic profit to zero economic profit. Okay, we're going to add a little bit of insult to injury on this one and make it even harder. This isn't that important. Bear with me. I'm going to show you something that might be a little bit confusing, but it also reveals a pretty simple idea that we can show you at the end. And if you have that, you're in pretty good shape. Okay, so here we go. Now, we just talked about long run to long run in a constant cost industry. This means that when new firms enter, it doesn't increase the cost for the firms already in that market, right? So firms can enter the market and costs don't rise for everybody. In reality, that's not true. There's increasing cost industries most of the time. When there are more competitors, it means that the resources that you're all competing over to build your goods and services are more scarce, which means that the price of those resources go up. So if you're tracking with me, that means not only are we going to have a shift in Mr. Dart, but we're also going to have a shift in our cost curves because costs are going to rise. But right now, constant cost looks like this. If demand increases, what's going to happen? Well, in this one, demand is going to shift to the right. When demand shifts to the right, the price goes up. Notice, I should go back. Notice we started in long-run equilibrium. When demand shifted to the right, price rose. We know when price rises, we have to change our Mr. DARP in our perfectly competitive firm because they're price takers. So Mr. DARP is going to go up to 20. When that happens, we have new profits. We went from zero economic profit to profit, right? Now, because we're profitable, what's going to happen in the long run? Well, firms going to enter the market to get their share of those profits. When firms enter the market, our Mr. Dart will fall down again and go back to perfect long-run equilibrium right there. In other words, in a constant cost industry, the only thing that changes in the long run is going to be the quantity in the industry. Our price is always going to wind up right back where it belongs. Demand shifted right, increased price to $20, but supply corrected it, leave it alone, supply takes it home, and got us back to $15. The only thing different is quantity went up because demand shifted right and then supply shifted right. Okay, that's constant cost industry. What if demand falls? What's going to happen? Well, demand will shift to the left. When demand, I should give you those. There you go. If you want to write that down. Demand's going to shift to the left. When demand shifts to the left, we are no longer at long-run equilibrium. In fact, we have ourselves a loss. When there's a loss, what are firms going to do? Firms are also going to leave the market. When they do that, supply shifts left. When supply shifts left, we have a new equilibrium over here. Our Mr. DARP is going to rise. So in the long run, when demand decrease, price decrease, and quantity decrease, and a loss was made in the short run. But in the long run, there was no real change. In the long run, quantity fell, but my price is the same as it was before. Leave it alone, supply will self-correct as we change. Now, in reality, most firms are in increasing costs, and this makes sense, right? When firms enter the market, I have to compete with them for those scarce resources like labor and seeds and soil and land and all that stuff. So it increases cost. What happens if that occurs? Well, there you go. I just said that. When new firms enter the market, the costs are going to rise for all the firms already in the market. So profits increase, supply increase, costs increase, price drops, but not back to original price. That's the logic. Don't worry about that. Let me show it to you on a graph. Looks like this. So if we're currently in long-run equilibrium, demand increases, what happens in the short run, and then how does it return in the long run? Well, in the short run, demand is going to shift to the right, changing our price. We know when price changes in the industry, Mr. DARP has to change as well. When Mr. DARP is this far above ATC, we know we got profits. Okay, so our profitability is pretty high. What's going to happen? Well, firms are going to enter the market. When firms enter the market, that pushes my price back down, right? But my price isn't going to go all the way down to 15. Why? Because there's an increasing cost industry. Did you catch that? When those firms entered the market, they drove up my average total cost and my marginal costs. Sorry, they shifted up as well. So my triple intersection is going to be right here instead of down there. In other words, as firms enter the market, supply shifts to the right, price is going to start falling, but at the same time, costs are rising. So instead of price falling to my previous costs and getting long-run equilibrium, price is falling, costs are rising at the same time, and they'll meet at a decidedly higher price than before, right? So we get back to long-run equilibrium, but my costs went up, but my price fell, but didn't fall all the way back to where it was before. In a constant cost, long-run supply is going to be horizontal. But in an increasing cost industry, long-run market supply is going to be increasing. What do we mean? We mean that price is not going to go back to where it was before. Price is going to go back to a slightly higher price. In an increasing cost industry, my price is not going to go back like this one. Go back here, like that one. It's not going to go right back to where it was before. My price is going to go down, but not as far as it was previously because costs are rising at the same time. So your big takeaway there. In an increasing cost industry, again, this question is rare, but increasing cost for industry, when the economy self-corrects, the price is still going to go back down in the long run, but it won't go down as far as it would have originally if it was a constant cost industry. It's not going to be back where it was before, right? Okay, let's talk about efficiency. Remember, there are a couple of different types of efficiency. You know these already. Efficiency is the optimal use of the resources. Perfect competition is every type of efficient, right? Remember, low efficiency means we have high costs and we have to exit the market. So if firms are inefficient, they're going to have losses and they're going to leave the market. They're going to be pushed out. Remember, there are two types of efficiency. There's productive efficiency, which means I'm producing at the lowest possible cost, long-run equilibrium. And then we have allocative efficiency, means we're producing what society wants at the price it wants. We demonstrate that as the lowest possible price for that firm. So that's productive efficiency and allocative efficiency. The big takeaway is that we are both of those types of efficiency and are perfectly competitive. But what about in the long run? So in the short run, we have MR equals MC right here. We show a profit. Our quantity is right here. But notice that at that quantity 1 where we're producing, MR equals MC, we're not at the lowest possible cost. Remember, the lowest possible cost is always going to be over here where marginal cost intersects average total cost. We are not there, which means that we are not productively efficient in a short run profitability because we're not at the minimum ATC. What about in a loss? Notice still in a loss, we are not producing at the lowest possible cost. Lowest possible cost is going to be at the intersection between MC and ATC. We are not there. We're producing over here where MR equals MC at Q2. So we are not productively efficient. Got the takeaway? In the short run, a perfectly competitive firm is not productively efficient. In the long run, notice Q3 is being made at that says Q2. Q3 is being made at the lowest possible cost because it's at the triple intersection where marginal cost intersects average total cost. So in the long run, we are productively efficient. Takeaway, short run, not productively efficient. Long run, we are. Okay, how about short run profitability for allocated efficiency? Notice that the price people are willing to pay equals the additional cost to produce Q1. In other words, MR equals MC, right? That means we are allocatively efficient. If MC, think of it this way, if MC is also supply, we call it sneaky supply, right? If MC is sneaky supply, then MC supply, we got demand right here. At this point, demand equals supply. Of course, that is allocatively efficient. Of course, we are producing what society wants at the price society wants. So in the short run, we are allocatively efficient. Okay, if we have short run profit at Q2, the price is greater than what marginal cost. So society wants to produce more. If we're not at equilibrium, if we're not producing where MR equals MC, like we're producing at QT here, then society wants us to produce more, right? So if we are not producing at equilibrium, which we would never do, not at the profit maximizing point, then we will not be allocatively efficient. But we are in the short run. And then perfectly competitive, of course, we are at MR equals MC, or we're at where sneaky supply equals demand. So we are going to be allocatively efficient one more time in the long run. In the long run, we will always be allocatively efficient. So if you're tracking, in the short run, we're always allocatively efficient. In the long run, always allocatively efficient. In the short run, never productively efficient. In the long run, always productively efficient. So 3 out of the 4 scenarios we're efficient. Okay, here's your summary. Those are all the words I just said. If you need to pause and write them down, you can. Friends, that was fast. We are done with all of the concepts. Check out 3.7 part 2 on the Khan Academy, and I will see you in class where we will break this down even more.